I'm Joey.T.Cartoon.P and you're watching the Cartoon Palooza. Third movies and franchises don't always do too well. I mean, I have so many fond memories of Spider-Man 3 and Pirates 3 at World's End, now don't I? No, I don't, because most of the time third movies to franchises suck, and I have no idea why, they just do. But because the Cars movies never really had a standard to begin with, it don't seem that bad, right? So before I begin my review, I do want to start by talking about its marketing. Cars 3 has had a great marketing campaign. It showed a trailer featuring a race, but rather than focus on catchphrases, Larry the Cable Guy, or anything we associate to the Cars movies, we see Lightning McQueen get into a car crash. That's a pretty big statement used for a series of movies featuring flatulent tractors. Suddenly the idea was that there was a good story to sell its audience on. However, does that make it derivative of the previous movie's faults, or do they manage to do something better? One thing this movie did that most of the other films in the franchise didn't focus on would be the thing you put more attention into, and that's the car racing. After watching the first two films, it fascinated me that we don't see a lot of racing in a movie starring a race car. We only get to see Lightning race professionally twice in the first film, and once during the Grand Prix in the second film. Okay, so the Prix was 3 races, but you'd think with a movie starring a bright red race car you'd see more racing in it. On top of the fact that it's not even about racing, it's about the spy aspect, so there you go. Lightning gets into a car crash in this film, so it's great to actually see him before he gets into that big crash because it sets the story in motion. It's kind of like that guy who's good at something, but you never really see him do it, but you kind of just take their word for it that they were good at that thing. Whereas in this case, we actually get to see why they're good at it. That's a big deal.
I decide when I'm done.
The movie's got a pretty obvious theme on quitting versus retiring on top. Don't believe me? I dare you to guess how many times Lightning McQueen says he'll decide when he quits.
I decide when I'm done.
He decides when he's done racing.
I decide when I'm done.
I give you a number, but I lost count. It's not a bad theme, especially since the movies are over 10 years old. I know that's a hard concept to wrap your head around, but Toy Story was over 10 years old when the first Cars movie came out. Therefore, for older moviegoers like myself, we don't really think of Cars movies being old. But I guess the movie was aware of this as well. There's a stronger sense that there are things we don't understand about older generations and newer ones. Therefore, it only makes sense when the movie has cute character moments that reflect this. In some ways, it proves that quality doesn't have to be reflective of age. Just because someone's older or newer don't make them bad. The movie's ability to relate to its audience without them requiring knowledge of racing helps the movie a lot. It's a matter of seeing how people react to age, which is a more universal concept people can wrap their heads around. Though, technically because the cards don't look like they age if they have the same body and paint job, which makes it harder to see this, but that's something we can talk about in another video I have planned. I did find it confusing when all the other cars would refer to Lightning being old since he didn't really look any different than the other cars racing against him. However, when you buy into the idea that Lightning is past his prime in favor of a new generation, does it make more sense? We got new characters like Cruz Ramirez to help us with this. If there's another thing I think this movie does better than its previous installments is have better characters. Some are one note, but I'll get into that later. In the film, Lightning's got a trainer to help him regain his glory who's more tech savvy and, well, sassy. This is a Pixar movie, and we've come to expect characters to call each other out like they're at a water cooler or something. Now what makes Cruz special is that, unlike Lightning, who's a character who's very confident, she has no confidence in herself whatsoever, and has the ability to relate to the new generation that he can't. Therefore, seeing their interactions with one another is great. It also takes away time from Mater, which I could care less about. Speaking of Mater, isn't it weird that the movie doesn't really connect to him a Cars 2? The movie that he starred in? I could care less about the second film since it did suck, and I couldn't blame the writers for not wanting to tie this film into that. But the movie is called Cars 3. Therefore, you're gonna have to question why it's a third installment after a second movie. It's not really the film's fault, it just sucks when you have to associate it to that film, and it doesn't help that the film itself doesn't even want to acknowledge that it exists. No spy cars, no hot date for Mater, no one cares. I know I'm going ahead and I'm praising the film, but I'm not going to say that it's not derivative of the original Cars films. Because it is a Cars film, it is going to share both positive and negative qualities of those last movies. We have a villain character who didn't really need to be set up to be a stereotypical villain, but just seems to walk into that role because they want to have a character the audience would want to root against. And if one of these characters wasn't enough, we get two. One is the rookie driver that becomes the obsession for Lightning to take down, much like Ivan Drago in Rocky IV. Now, it doesn't really help that his motivation is as stiff and one-dimensional, but when Ivan Drago had a presence about him that was memorable despite being one note, Jackson Storm is just another talking car. The second character is a fan-turned-millionaire who uses his resources to shape the future of his idols. Hold on a sec, that was Syndrome from The Incredibles. Let's talk about Sterling from Cars 3. So, he's a fan-turned-millionaire who uses his resources to shape the future of his idols by buying out Lightning McQueen's sponsor. Now that's more like it. At first I didn't mind the character since he didn't have a maniacal scheme to destroy the world or something along those lines. He's a dude who wants to sell a brand. But you could tell it wasn't simply because he's a rich guy who wants to be richer, rather, you could tell he loved Lightning McQueen enough to want to see him succeed. But by the third act that changes, and he does become another one-note villain who wants to make a fortune on merchandising the Cars movies. I mean, the Lightning McQueen.
I never really thought of myself as a brand.
Man, you gotta love that the movie's self-aware of this. In short, I do think this is the best installment to the Cars franchise. The movie could have easily taken a turn into becoming a marketing ploy to sell toys, but it don't settle with being a cash-in. There's a good story on confidence, knowing when to move on, and following your passion in a way that does feel original despite being done before. Unlike the first film where you know it's using tired tropes, this movie at least tries to give its audience something new even if it isn't perfect. I have no problem seeing Cars 3 again, and for someone who feels the way I do about the Cars films, that's saying a lot. So comment below and let me know what you think. What is your favorite third film in any franchise that you can think of? I know, it ain't asking that much, but really think about it. Comment below and let me know what you think. I'm Joey.T.Cartoon.P, and thanks for watching this review on the Cartoon Palooza.